Welcome back, viewers. You're still here on Scope with me, Waqar Rizvi. In this segment, we're going to discuss an Iranian scientist in the U.S. Who's still in a U.S. immigration jail being held by ICE. And he has now, unfortunately, contracted coronavirus as well. Dr. Sirous Asgari is a materials science and engineering professor who then spoke out in March of this year itself about the unsanitary and inhumane conditions that he was placed in within detention. This all goes back to 2017 when he was charged with fraud and trade secret theft relating to his work with the university in Ohio. He was acquitted in that case. And this is a man who has major ties to the U.S. too, by the way, as in he has children who live in the U.S. and work in the U.S. And he himself, of course, had a valid visa at the time. That visa has been revoked, and that basically since 2019 onwards, he's been kept in this ICE detention, and he's been pleading to be released, but that is not occurring. This is certainly something that is of concern, of course, on many levels, but it seems that he is a victim of this ongoing tensions between the U.S. and Iran as well, quite likely. Let's discuss that further. We're joined now by Reza Khanzadeh, who is a research fellow at the Sharif University think tank, which is based in Tehran. He's also a PhD candidate at the University of Oxford. He's joining us now from Washington, D.C. this morning. Reza, good morning to you. What do you make of this case? I mean, the more one reads about it, the more disturbing it is. What justification do you see, if any, to continue to hold this man in prison?
Yeah, I don't see any justification really, other than the fact if we were to put ourselves perhaps in the place of ICE and the position that they're in, historically, if we've seen the way ICE has handled their detainees, it's always been very poor conditions, very, very inhumane conditions. And this is not an isolated incident with this one individual. If we look at thousands upon thousands of Central American, migrants and detainees, at ICE, they've experienced sexual abuse, verbal abuse, physical abuse by these, ICE agents. Even the ACLU came out with a report from 2009 to 2014 that, ICE agents have, performed these types of abuses. So, there is no justification. But once again, if we were to put the shoe on the other foot, so to speak, with the virus and having these types of restrictions as far as travel, I could see why perhaps they are detaining him, because right now he is in the Wynn location. And I think the last time I checked the ICE website, they have about 490 confirmed cases, but at the Wynn location, there's 7. So he's included in that 7, and he is in isolation. So it's as if they're taking their own steps, their own measures to kind of self-quarantine or self-isolate these. I mean, they call them detainees, but I'd rather call them prisoners, the way they've been treated. And yeah, I feel like they kind of run by their own rules, if you will. And this is a microcosm of what the U.S. government has had problems with for decades upon decades, is this type of self-governance, if you will, when it comes to ICE.
Reza, do you think at some level that Dr. Asgari has become a victim of just this U.S.-Iran tensions as well, right? Because the Americans possibly could argue, and Western countries could argue, that there are a couple of political prisoners within Iran as well, who are dual nationals of whatever respective Western country, be it European, America, Canada, or whatever. Do you think that he's sort of fallen victim to that whole dynamic?
Yeah, I've done some research on that, and I have followed that in the past couple of years. And my fellow Iran analysts in the Washington D.C. area might make that argument, but I would steer clear of that, primarily because historically, yes, we've seen that this type of U.S.-Iran relationship, or the back and forth that they have, that tension that they have, involves these types of prisoner swaps and detaining a foreign national on some bogus charges. But ever since Trump has come into office, it's more of this, bombastic rhetoric where it's more about going to war rather than, doing these types of prisoner swaps, if you will. So no, I don't really see it as some type of, foreign policy, political, type of, angle. I think it more has to do with the, dysfunction of the U.S. government and just how they, handle their, detainees at the ICE, locations, if you will. Because like I said, this is a long history of problems that ICE has encountered, and there's been vast number of human rights organizations, pleading that this needs to be taken care of. And actually, most recently, a federal court in Miami, I believe, has a lawsuit against ICE and the U.S. Attorney General because of the kind of conditions that are going on within the Florida, types of detainee centers for ICE. But this one individual, Dr. Asgari, he's in Louisiana. So, but I think it's more about just the dysfunction of the U.S. government rather than.
Okay, so Reza, then as a final thought, then just before we go, I totally get your point about the goal here or the intention here may not have been political in nature, and probably does go down to the ICE dysfunctionality as you quite correctly laid out. But do you think then the result of this could nevertheless become political? Because as you well know, I'm sure you've been following this in Persian language media, especially within Iran, as well as even English language media within Iran. This has been playing out. This is almost front page news at this point, because this is obviously an Iranian citizen who is being mistreated in Iranians' eyes, at least at this point in time. This will play out, do you think, geopolitically?
I feel time will tell. I'm still cautious because, there is two individuals being detained in Iran right now. Their last names are Namazi, and I think it's been hundreds, if not, hundreds upon hundreds of days that they've been detained, and they've kind of fell out of the, global conversation or the, media conversation. So I feel like this might, follow the same suit. And no, honestly, I don't believe it will, and that kind of goes back with Trump and his approach, or maybe. Yeah, his approach with Iran, having that type of rhetoric where, it seems like they're always on the brink of war with Iran. So unfortunately, no, I don't feel like him being detained will, kind of escalate or, get to a higher level of, debate or, yeah.
All right, very well. Let's leave that as a thought then, Reza. But of course, we appreciate you getting up this early for us there in D.C. and giving us your thoughts, of course, on this disturbing case. As I said, viewers, Dr. Asgari still in detention, even though he'd been pleading even before, mind you, he had contracted COVID-19. Since 2017, he's had this case in which he's been exonerated. So for any citizen of any country to then be held in ICE detention, even though he or she has been acquitted in whatever case has been put forth against them. Does that really make sense? Does it go back to, as Reza there said, just ICE dysfunctionality? Because it's not like it's just Dr. Asgari in ICE detention. There's countless of Central Americans who are also being sexually abused right as we speak, probably, and being mistreated in some fashion or the other. So Dr. Asgari has unfortunately got caught up within all of that. But then on the other side, of course, there is the argument to be made that there are political tensions between the U.S. and Iran. That's just a fact of life. Can this or can this not play out politically in that regard? Because at this point in time, at least, as we're speaking, the Iranian media is picking up on this story and is running with it. And it is, of course, of importance, I would imagine, to the Iranian government, as well as it should be for the American government as well, considering this is a citizen of a perceived adversarial country as well. I'll be back with my last segment after this break. Stay tuned.